After Andy Dalton's stellar performance on the road at Las Vegas on Sunday, can the Panthers even consider going back to Bryce Young this year? We'll break it all down right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council. Why? Because on Wednesdays, that will be tomorrow, the weekly Wednesday mailbag is back right here on the show. And that's where I'm going to answer all of your questions about the Carolina Panthers. All you got to do is either at me or DM me. And if you feel so inclined, you can also follow me on Twitter at Julian Council, but that is not required. Just at me or DM me. Get those questions in for the weekly Wednesday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your $5 bet and get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. What a Sunday it was in Las Vegas for the Carolina Panthers, and in particular for Andy Dalton. Andrew Gregory Dalton absolutely flayed the Raiders on Sunday. And we had talked about this last week on the Locked On NFL Crossover Thursday, presented by our friends over at Prize Picks, with Q Myers, host of Locked On Raiders. And he had pointed out in the past, Andy Dalton has absolutely cooked the Raiders. And we saw it again on Sunday, and glad that Andy Dalton is here in Carolina, and glad the Panthers have seemed to figure out their quarterback situation for the interim. I said this on the show on Sunday after watching that 36-22 win. The Panthers have their quarterback for the rest of 2024, provided that Andy Dalton continues to play well and stays healthy, but also they may have their quarterback for 2025. The long-term answer at the position, they don't have that right now. They don't necessarily need to have it. They need to be focused on the Bengals and what they can achieve in 2024 and trying to evaluate the rest of the roster and trying to just build the overall roster and set a foundation here with the head coach, Dave Canales, in Carolina here in year one. But there's a lot of talk on Sunday, a massive media blitz coming from NFL insiders about the Panthers potentially going back to Bryce Young later on this season after they benched them a week ago on Monday. And understand this, every week you see a lot of news come out on Sunday morning before the games kick off at 1. And that's a part of just an embargoed information that these reporters collect throughout the week and are told you can't put this out there until the morning of game day. So that's what happened. These reporters, Ian Rapport, Adam Schefter, Jonathan Jones, they all spoke to sources within the Carolina Panthers organization or people around the league, and they were not allowed to put out this information until Sunday, where we saw all of these articles about, will the Panthers go back to Bryce Young, that this is just a break, this is not a permanent benching. And looking at Ian Rapport, what he wrote, while Canales did not detail when Young might play again or how long Dalton will start, sources say this is viewed as a timeout for Young, not a season-long benching, a time to take a deep breath, let it slow down, de-stress, and learn by watching. Adam Schefter pointed out the Panthers had received trade requests and then later on wrote this in his article. For now, the Panthers still would like Young to back up their new starter, Andy Dalton, and believe there is a chance they could turn to Young again later this season, depending on how the upcoming weeks play out. According to sources, Jonathan Jones used to cover the Panthers for the Charlotte Observer, now CBS Sports. He wrote this, but short of Dalton going on a tear, there's a belief within the organization that Young will be called upon again this season in what would be one of the earliest second acts of a number one overall pick's career. And there's a quote from a source, you want to see what you have in this kid, one team source said, it'd be foolish not to. And that was part of the reason I didn't like the benching after 2 games. You did all of this off season to try and help Bryce. And then after 2 weeks, you're going to move on from him. And I understood he was awful. And if he kept playing the way he played, the Panthers were going to be quickly out of playoff contention. And the Panthers also were going to have to put Bryce Young on the bench for the sake of himself and the rest of the roster as they see what happens on Sundays. They see what happens on the practice field, and they would have known that Bryce Young was not going to give them the best opportunity to win on Sundays, which clearly was the case on Sunday afternoon in that win against the Las Vegas Raiders. We have talked about the offensive line. The offensive line gave up 2 pressures on Sunday. Andy Dalton was kept clean. The only time he was sacked were both on just busted assignments. The first sack, don't know what happened there. Robert Spillane coming up unblocked. And in the second time, JT Sanders, who was the lowest graded player, by the way, again, for the Carolina Panthers, according to Pro Football Focus, he had no idea what his blocking assignment was, and that led to a sack. But it wasn't like Moton or Icky or Corbett or Hunt or Lewis or Zavala when he came in were just getting toasted and getting put on their ass and giving up sacks. That was not the case on Sunday. They protected Andy Dalton. They protected Bryce Young week 1 and week 2, and we saw the receivers getting open and making plays. Like Bryce Young clearly was what was holding back the Carolina Panthers offense in 2024. And understand, I'm saying this year in 2024, we can have a wider conversation. We've certainly had the discussion about last year, and Bryce was not perfect. What was around him was not perfect. They're all to blame. But this year, it was clear he was holding back the Carolina Panthers after his performances week 1 against the Saints and week 2 against the Chargers. So reading all of that, their hope, it sounded like, was they could go back to Bryce. Maybe they didn't believe Andy Dalton was going to go out there and play the way he did on Sunday. And I don't expect Andy to throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns every single week. And if he does, as I told y'all yesterday on the show, he's going to be the MVP. I don't want to hear anything about comeback player of the year. That's MVP stuff, and they're going to go to the playoffs. That would be outstanding. I don't think that's what they expect or really what you should expect, even though it was refreshing to finally see quarterback play that is above average, at least on that Sunday for the Carolina Panthers watching Andy Dalton. But, you know, you look at this, short of Dalton going on a tear for now, blah, blah, blah. Diana Rossini had it right when she wrote this. It's over. No matter what Carolina says, rest assured it's over. This is an experiment. This isn't an experiment, excuse me. This isn't a Ross and Rachel break. I'm told that's from Friends. I'm black. I've never seen Friends. This is Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston over. That's what she wrote. She was the only one to come out and say flat out, like, this is not happening. And everyone around the league understands. That's why the Panthers have received trade requests from 4 teams, being offered as high as a 4th-round pick, according to Jonathan Jones, CBS Sports. Everyone knows it's over. And the players themselves showed you on Sunday, they don't want Bryce. They want Andy. And we heard from them after the game in the locker room. These are 2 quotes from Diontae Johnson, one from David Newton of ESPN.com, the other from Joe Person of The Athletic. This is the first one from David Newton, and they're asking him, what did Andy Dalton bring that had been missing? And Diontae Johnson said, a vet presence. Just having a quarterback back there to get us in position, score, execute plays. We just did a great job of staying locked in. Every play call, we made the most of it. Then this is the one also from later on. This is from Joe Person. Quote, this is Diontae Johnson still speaking. Quote, you need a guy like that makes the offense play harder. Not saying we weren't doing that with Bryce, but it's different when you've got a vet because you know what to expect from him. You know what you're getting. Once we got out there between the lines, you've seen it was different when Andy was back there getting the ball out to the receivers. We were running the ball pretty well. Got to give a shout out to the offensive line. Quote, you need a guy like that makes the offense play harder. You didn't have to say that. We saw it on the field. It was just the offense. It was the defense. It was special teams. Everyone played harder for Andy Dalton because everybody on this team believes in Andy Dalton. And for Diontae Johnson to say after that, not saying we weren't doing that for Bryce, but come on, you didn't have to say you weren't doing that for Bryce. We saw the effort. Defensively, we saw the effort on special teams. We saw on offense where, I mean, you guys were getting open. It wasn't like there was a lack of effort, but you saw a new energy out there on Sunday. So can the Panthers go back to Bryce Young this year in 2024? No. Is it possible that Bryce gets another opportunity next year? Maybe, but I think it's over. I thought it was over a week ago. I thought it was over on Sunday when I watched what Andy Dalton did. And today, here, a week after, all this has happened, yeah, it's over for Bryce in Carolina, and it's probably the best thing for all parties to move on after the season. End season, unless the Panthers go sign another backup, like a veteran, to come out here. And they could sign, we saw in Miami, they signed Tyler Huntley off of the Ravens practice squad. The Panthers could decide to do that. Now, I don't know if that's something that they would like to do, because they would like to have just the mirage of that, they're the illusion rather, that they're still developing Bryce Young. And they would also probably like to have somebody with experience in this offense who's been here all off season, opposed to having somebody who is just coming off the street or from another team who has not been in this offense, where they're not in a desperate situation like Miami with Tua Tagovailoa out for at least the next 3 games. And we'll see if he's out longer. They need to bring somebody else in. They at least needed to bring somebody else in. The Panthers don't necessarily need to bring somebody else in right now. If they don't believe in Bryce Young, it feels like they should probably bring somebody to actually be the backup, opposed to it being Bryce. But we'll see what they do. Andy is a quarterback now. This team believes in him, and Bryce Young's time in Carolina will come to an end following the season here in 2024. Dave Canales spoke to the media for the first time as a winning coach here in Carolina, gave some updates on the injury situation and whether Andy Dalton still is their quarterback, and a nice little thing from Mike Sandio, the Athletic, about the decision and who made it. We'll talk about that here in just a moment here on Locked On Panthers. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's what to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses are using a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. In fact, 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. For the first time after a win here in Carolina, Panthers head coach Dave Canales met with the media to discuss what went right in Las Vegas, that 36-22 trouncing of the Raiders. That was not that close. It was 33-7. That game was garbage time for the last 20 minutes. That's how thoroughly outplayed, outlasted, outwitted the Las Vegas Raiders were by the Carolina Panthers on Sunday there at Allegiant Stadium. And a great day for all the Panther fans who made a trip out there. I know the Roaring Riot was loud and proud out there in Vegas all weekend, and it's good to see. That was one of the biggest trips that the Carolina Panthers fan group is going to have this year. That one, of course, Munich. I'll be there in Munich, so cannot wait to see what that game is going to be like against the Giants, who are struggling so far this season. They did get a win on Sunday at Cleveland. Brian Burns, I saw he had a strip sack in that game, and we'll get to reunite with him all the way over in Bavaria. So looking at, though, what Dave Canales had to say, at least going over some of the comments that he had on Monday afternoon, he gave what update he could about the injury situation. As he said, they still don't have full conclusions on Adam Thielen, who went out with a hamstring. Lonnie Johnson was injured on the opening kickoff of the second half with a groin injury. Damien Lewis, he also went out with, what did I have him out with? He went out with an elbow injury, and then Jordan Fuller went out with a hamstring. So they do not have all of the situations as far as how long those guys can be out, if out at all, moving forward. Now, Thielen had that touchdown catch. That was a dime by Andy Dalton, just over the middle, down to the, deep down the field, anticipatory throw that you want to see from quarterbacks, and he made it, and Thielen caught it, and then came up lame. He was holding his knee at first, and I was really concerned, no, don't let this be it for Adam Thielen. At his age, getting a significant knee injury would probably end his time in the NFL. Fortunately, only seems to be a hamstring. We'll see what the severity of that is. Probably find out on Wednesday the next time Dave Canales speaks to the media. And that would be a big loss. I told y'all before the season, the Panthers can ill afford to lose Diontae Johnson or Adam Thielen at any point this season. And truly, Diontae Johnson's the one they could not be without. And we saw on Sunday why that's a guy who needs to be on the field every single week for this passing game to reach its potential, as he was outstanding on Sunday. And Adam Thielen, he's also important. Had a drop in that game, but made that great play. We saw what he did last year. I'm not expecting to have those numbers now, even with Andy Dalton as a starting quarterback here in Carolina, but he's still a significant piece of this offense. And Xavier Legette, nice 35-yard catch and run. He played well in his opportunities. Jonathan Mingo made a couple of snags on Sunday as well. I just don't love the depth that they have here, because outside of those four, we have David Moore as well. You look at the practice squad, there's a couple of guys, but not really anyone else that you can depend on, any veterans on this roster. So they can't be without Thielen for a significant amount of time. Hopefully it's something where he can play on Sunday, and if he can't, hopefully he can be able to stay away from IR, where he would be out for 4 weeks. Do not need that situation. Be great to give Legette an opportunity to step up, where he did step in Adam Thielen's position on Sunday when Thielen went out for the rest of the game in that second half, and Mingo can step up as well. I don't love the idea of that, and it could work out. Not saying it's not going to work out. I just feel a lot more comfortable when it's Diontae Johnson and Adam Thielen, two veterans, where you know what you're going to get from them every single Sunday. And as far as Lonnie Johnson, the Panthers got a decent amount of cornerback depth, so hopefully that will be something that's not too significant as he helps them out in special teams and have to come in early with Dane Jackson currently on IR, at least out for one more week. We'll see if he comes back after that on the road against Chicago in week 5. Damien Lewis, that elbow, he's kind of been banged up since he's got here. He's been out at practice for the most part. Had a couple times during training camp where he has family matters where he was not there. Chandler Zavala stepped in, not Brady Christensen. And I found that to be interesting, as it had always been at least told to me that Brady Christensen is going to be the Panthers' 6th offensive lineman. And I felt like when the regular season actually came around, it'd be Christensen who would step in at left guard, not Zavala. And Christensen, as we know, a couple years ago, last year, to start the season, was the starting left guard. And Zavala had to take over that spot eventually before he was out for the rest of the season. And he took over that spot on Sunday. And mixed results, just looking at the Pro Football Focus grade, he had a 48.2 overall grade. That was the second lowest of any offensive member on the Panthers on Sunday in that win. But his pass blocking grade, and remember, week 3 a year ago on the road in Seattle, a 0.0 grade. On Sunday at Las Vegas, 77.2 grade. And he had like a 50 run blocking grade. I'm not quite sure how the formula says he had a 48.2 overall when, as an offensive lineman, he had a 77.2 pass blocking grade. I don't know. I always say PFF is not the gospel. It's just one way to be able to evaluate the games and how the guys have played. And they said he didn't play well. Nothing stood out to me on Sunday when he came in. The game was already over by the time he came in for Damien Lewis anyways. So that's where they stand as far as those go. And also at safety, they're pretty solid, even with Fuller missing any sort of time, with Woods out there. Now, they'll have to change some of their looks as they went more with that 5 DB look, and they had a lot of times where Josie Jewell's not out there, where they were able to have Xavier Woods, I think actually 6 DB look, where they had Xavier Woods. It went a lot lighter because they didn't believe the Raiders were a team that could run the ball. So it'll be interesting to see how that impacts them as far as formations moving forward, and depending on the game plan of who they're going to play in the coming weeks. Canales came out and said this week was so powerful for us in terms of trusting the process. And he said, I can say all of these things about what we need to do, what our team needs to look, the energy, but it doesn't really matter unless we win these games. And this is something that really validates all that he'd been preaching to those guys. And really, what maybe validates it more is the decision that was made last Monday to sideline Bryce Young. And it's interesting. He was asked about this multiple times about, is Andy your quarterback moving forward? Is there any thought of going back to Bryce Young? And he said, quote, Andy is our quarterback. He gives us the best chance to win. That is our approach as we begin to prepare for the Bengals. He does not want to talk about this at all. And Dave's whole demeanor has changed over the last 7 days to where he was a guy that was just always smiling, the positivity. And I'm not saying he's not still positive, but he's become far more serious as far as just what you think of a football coach, I suppose, should be. Just that stereotypical, I'm just focused on ball. I'm not worried about any of this other stuff. He's totally changed the way he's gone about things. And I wonder, and here's my thing. Y'all know how I feel about David Tepper. There's no way that the Panthers can have something good happen based off of a David Tepper decision, right? It has to be someone else's decision. Like if Dave Canales turns out to be a great head coach, it's got to be Dan Morgan, right? Who made the decision to take him. Now you're going to probably say, well, didn't David Tepper hire Dan Morgan? Nope, let's not talk about that. If it really was Dave Canales' decision, maybe the Panthers got themselves a ball coach. I know everybody's fired up by what they put out there on social media in the locker room after the game, rightfully so. But possibly it was Dave's decision. I'm starting to come around on this a little bit more, mainly because I don't want to give David Tepper credit for potentially saying that I don't want Bryce Young to be my quarterback anymore. And Mike Sandy of The Athletic, he has his Pick Six column every Monday following NFL Sundays. And he had wrote this on Monday saying, why would Young's top advocate, Tepper, lead the charge to bench his hand-picked quarterback? Tepper's history suggests he would be more inclined to ask tough questions of the coaches and team builders. And there was a quote from a source saying, I think this was the football guy saying, what else can we do? At least we can run an offense of Andy Dalton, an exec from another team said. Possibly it was football guys. Maybe it was Dave Canales. We have to understand, too, that Rossini put this out there. Multiple people put this out there in reporting. Hard to find anyone around the league that believed that David Tepper did not play a role in this. Now, understand this as well. If you were an owner and your coach is coming to you saying, we're going to bench the number one pick from a year ago, and you brought that coach in to work with that guy, you probably want to say yes or no to that, right? I mean, you're not necessarily needed to make the decision, but you want to be kept abreast of those situations. And David Tepper has told us that he is involved in every major situation in Carolina, which is a problem, as we all know. But in this instance, maybe it was a situation where Dave Canales said, we're doing this. I don't care what you think. We're doing this. I'm trying to win games. You brought me here to win games. I know you brought me here to work with Bryce Young, but this ain't going to work right now with him playing the way he's playing and the rest of the team clearly frustrated and only a couple weeks away from just checking out on every message I have for them. So maybe Sando's right. Maybe it was Dave Canales who actually made this decision. Really, it's kind of immaterial because it was the right decision for the Carolina Panthers based off what we saw on Sunday, and Young wasn't getting it done this year. So hard to argue against it. Don't love how the Panthers have gone about the entire Bryce Young saga, as I think they're largely to blame for things not working out for him to this point. And I think just permanently, I just think things are going to work for him. But they did this more so than Bryce Young. And yes, he has his own inefficiencies, his own limitations, and we know about the size and all that. But they didn't give the guy a chance to really succeed last year. They gave it to him this year, but he was already broken beyond repair here in Carolina based off of what he went through last season. So whether it was Dave, whether it was David, don't really matter. The Panthers made the right decision. And as far as Bryce goes, Canales asked about his leadership as a backup, and he didn't really want to answer much, just saying he was consistent with his leadership as we have seen in the past. He's just not interested in answering any questions about the quarterback. He's not interested in answering a lot of questions, period, nowadays. He's laser focused on making sure they continue to stack good days and good weeks and go out there and win football games. Everything else, he's not worried about. He's just trying to win, which that's good to see. You cannot fault the way he's leading right now with the Carolina Panthers now at 1-2 with the quarterback and Andy Dalton and hosting the Bengals on Sunday at Bank of America Stadium. Keys to victory. Do that every Sunday. A lot of Sundays, they're just a waste of time. Sorry, do it every Friday, rather. A lot of Fridays, they're a waste of time because Panthers decide, nah, we're not going to do this. We're going to go lose. But they actually listened, and we'll go over the keys of victory and how things played out for the Panthers in that win against the Raiders on Sunday here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And speaking of bets, FanDuel went over there earlier today, looked at the MVP odds for Andy Dalton, plus 20,000. Comeback player of the year, though, a little bit lower. Or a little bit higher, a lot higher. Not a little, a lot higher, plus 2,500. So if you want to go out there after what you saw on Sunday and put some cash down on Andy Dalton, plus 2,500 for comeback player of the year. But really, come on, let's go ahead and do it. Plus 20,000. MVP of the league, go out there and do it. You'll get started with your $200 of bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. And right there, $5, get $200 back right away. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Every Friday, I give my keys of victory for the Carolina Panthers heading into their game on Sunday. And this Friday, the number one thing I was hoping for the Panthers to do was to be functional on offense. How about this for functional on offense? Andy Dalton threw for 212 yards and 3 touchdowns in the first half. Weeks 1 and 2 with Bryce Young as Carolina Panthers starting quarterback. Bryce Young threw for 245 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. In one half, really one drive, the Carolina Panthers offense was functional yet again. They had a huge issue heading into this game also on third down. They were 2 for 22 on third down in the first 2 weeks. And then on Sunday, they were 5 of 12 on third down. I've been tracking this as I have seen. They have really struggled on third down. And the first 2 weeks, the Panthers face an average distance of 6.7 yards on third down. Actually, on Sunday, it was worse. It was 7.6. Now, early on in the game, the Panthers found themselves in situations where they weren't having to convert very many third and longs. They had a 3rd and 2 that they converted, 3rd and 1. They had another 3rd and 2 that they missed on. Then they had a 3rd and 14 that eventually they converted. Then a 3rd and 5. That was a 3rd and goal situation where they scored a touchdown out to Chuba Hubbard. So I think actually that was Diontae Johnson. That was a touchdown there. First, they're 4 out of 5 to start off the game. Then after that, just had a tough time as they had a 3rd and 11, 3rd and 10 that they didn't converted 3rd and 8, didn't convert a 3rd and 8 later on. There's 3rd and 20, did not convert 3rd and 7, 3rd and 4. And later on, like when you have 3rd and 20, 7 and 4, the game is already over by that point in time. So encouraging that when the game is still in the balance, that they were able to convert on third down, but still they kind of fell off at the end of the game where they were unable to convert on 6 of their last 7 third down opportunities in that game against the Raiders. But positive vibes only. The offense was functional thanks to Andy Dalton and the way that this offense played overall. Number 2, how can the offense be functional? You got to get the playmakers involved, and they did that. Diontae Johnson had 34 receiving yards on 49 routes through the first 2 games. On Sunday, 8 receptions for a career high with 122 yards and a touchdown. The catch and run that he made there in the second half as well. You're sitting there like, wow, what? Where has this been? Maybe it was still in the second quarter rather than the second half, because I think that might have been right before Dalton threw that touchdown pass to Adam Thielen, if I'm being correct. I think that's where it was. Either way, it's been a while since we've seen a receiver make a play like that. Really, it's been since DJ Moore was here in Carolina back in 2022. So Diontae Johnson finally involved. I believe he got like 15 targets in that game as well. That's outstanding. Adam Thielen and Xavier Legette also need to be more involved. They had 7 targets apiece entering Sunday. Thielen had 3 receptions on 5 targets for 40 yards and a touchdown. Would have had more had he not gotten injured on that touchdown reception right before the close of the first half. Xavier Legette had 2 receptions on 3 targets for 42 yards. Going to see him get more involved, especially if this injury to Thielen's hamstring is going to be significant. The hope is that it's not, but it's possible he'll miss time starting on this Sunday against Cincinnati when they come to town. Legette going to be more involved, needs to be more involved. Good to see both those guys be able to make some plays on Sunday. Chuba Hubbard only had 16 rushing attempts, but he had a 56.3 success rate, which was 11th in the NFL entering Sunday. He had 21 carries, 114 yards versus the Raiders. The Panthers had 2 players of at least 100 scrimmage yards. That was Chuba with 169 because he was a threat in the backfield as well. And I said this on Twitter, we're getting to see a glimpse of what Dave Canales is going to use Jonathan Brooks for. And there are people like, whoa. It's like, guys, I said in the tweet, when he's available and RB1, he's not available. And whenever he is available this season, he's not going to be RB1. I'm talking more about like next year in 2025. We're getting a glimpse of what they're going to do with their running backs, but in particular, Jonathan Brooks. Chuba Hubbard is the guy right now. No, don't get it twisted. I'm sure I'm already getting questions about this. Use him, abuse him, then lose him. I don't care how well he plays. They do not need to pay this man into the season. They already drafted a running back, traded to get him in the second round. That's who they're going to rock with. So love how Chuba's playing. Glad he got involved, but no, don't even ask. let's not even act like your boy's going to change his stance on all of that about wanting to go out there and start paying dudes. And I think he's good. Would love to see it, but no. And speaking of success rate, looking at it now, Chuba Hubbard, according to Pro Football Reference, wow, where is he at? Is he fall down? They got him down at 30th in rushing success rate. That's interesting because they had a ton of success. And I read Bill Barnwell had him as like a 67 success rate or something crazy on Sunday. So I don't know. That's just what Pro Football Reference has, but he was outstanding. Johnson, 122 yards, of course. So that was the first time since week 16 in 2022 when they faced off against the Detroit Lions, the best offensive performance in the history of the Carolina Panthers organization. That was the last time that we saw two players go for at least 100 yards from scrimmage. And I believe in that game, it was Chuba and it was Diontae Foreman, both running for over 100 yards. I believe that had to have been the case because they ran wild on the Lions that Sunday. Or I guess it was probably a Saturday, right? Because it was like Christmas Eve or something like that. And in number 3, the last thing they needed to do was don't let the Raiders run on you. The Raiders came in as the worst run offense in the NFL. The Panthers also came in as one of the worst run defenses in the NFL, allowing 199.5 yards per game in their first 2 weeks. The Raiders had 16 carries for 55 yards and a touchdown that came in garbage time, 3.4 yards per carry. They were outstanding. Carolina was with Jaden Peavy, LeBron Ray, Ashawn Robinson, Nick Thurman, all of those guys stepping up to help out in the run support. And it's not like they played a very they had light boxes. They didn't have a lot of guys up there on the line of scrimmage. They didn't have a lot of guys trying to stop the run. They were more focused. Like, you can't run the ball anyways, Las Vegas. We're not worried about it. We're going to be back here and wait for you to try and throw the ball. And they had success. Early downs, late downs, they were outstanding against the run. Now, Las Vegas sucks at running the football. The Saints do not, and neither do the Chargers, who had trouble against Pittsburgh, who has a good run defense. I still need to see more out of this run defense moving forward to really believe that they've turned the corner. Because last year before that, like really since 2019, and since the correlation to all of this is since they've gone to a 3-man front, they have been bad against the run. I need to see more to really believe that this has changed. I felt like this year with Derek Brown and with Jadeveon Clowney coming in and with Josie Jewell and all the guys, Ashawn Robinson as well, that they would get it better against the run. You lose Derek Brown. Shai Tuttle's banged up. Hasn't really been helping you anyways the last 2 years at that nose tackle spot. We'll see how they continue to progress. But Sunday was encouraging because when you face a bad running team, you can't make them look like a good running team. You faced 2 good running teams against the Saints and the Chargers week 1 and 2, and that played out that way. Week 3, you faced a bad one, and you showed them just how bad they were. So kudos to the defense and to everybody for that 36-22 win on the road against Las Vegas on Sunday. That's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all, subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where tomorrow on Wednesday, the weekly Wednesday mailbag is back here on the Locked On Panthers. All you got to do is either at me or DM me to get those questions into me right now. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding, and I'll talk to y'all on Wednesday.